This is question 44 on chemistry from the 2018 NSAA. So the question tells you that you have an atom X, a monatomic anion Y, and a monatomic cation Z, which all have the same electron configuration. Then it asks you which of these statements is always correct. Y has fewer protons than X, Z has more electrons than protons, X, Y, and Z are in the same group, X, Y, and Z have consecutive atomic numbers, or X, Y, and Z have the same mass. So where to begin? Well, why don't we write down everything that we know about X, Y, and Z? We have atom X, which doesn't have a charge. We have monatomic anion Y. We don't know its charge, so let's just call that Y minus. And similarly, we have cation Z, which has a charge of, let's call it Z plus. And we're told that they have the same electron configuration. And what does that mean? They must have the same number of electrons. Let's call this number E. Now what about protons? Why don't we draw a table for this? Can you work out how many protons that each one has? Well, we know that they all have E electrons. So how many protons does X have? It's a neutral atom, so it must have the balanced number of protons and electrons. So this must be E as well. What about Y? We know it has E electrons, but it's an anion, so it has more electrons than it has protons, to make it negative. So it must have fewer protons than it has electrons, and the difference must be Y. That's the charge. And similarly for Z, Z has E electrons as well, but it's a cation, so it must have more protons to make it positive. So it must have E plus Z protons. So now that we've written down everything that we can about X, Y, and Z, why don't we look at each of the statements in turn? Firstly, it says Y has fewer protons than X, and thankfully we've already worked out how many protons and electrons we have in each one, so we can read this straight off the table as Y having E minus Y protons, X having E protons, and obviously E minus Y is smaller than E, so this first one is correct. Let's look at the rest for completion and to make sure I've not gone wrong. It says Z has more electrons than it has protons. If you look at our table, Z has E plus Z protons and just E electrons, so this is the wrong way around, so we can cross that off. So next it says that X, Y, and Z are in the same group. So if you visualise our periodic table, a group is obviously a column. For X, Y, and Z to be in the same group, they'd have to be in the same column. So is this likely? So we have X with E protons. For Y to have E minus Y protons, it'll either have to have Y equals 0, which we know isn't true because we know it has a charge, or Y is the exact number to get it to the next row, which doesn't make much sense because we know that Y can be any number at all. So this is wrong as well. The next one is that X, Y, and Z have consecutive atomic numbers. Now this would be true if Y and Z were both 1, because say X is here, Y would be here, and Z would be here. But we know that little y and little z can be any number, so Y could be here, X could be here, Z could be over here. So this doesn't have to be true either. And finally, X, Y, and Z all have the same mass. Now for this to be true, they'd have to have the same number of protons and neutrons, because we know they're what makes up the relative atomic mass. But we know that they have different numbers of protons, so this is also wrong. So our answer is A.